obviously being invited to the Story Museum has infected us all, because when I was asked to say a few words, I started thinking about a story, and because I'm a selfish Scottish male, I thought about my own story and my own involvement in the world of philanthropy. Many, many years ago, before most of you were born, in the 60s, after I left university, I joined the world of advertising in London, and that was the world of Mad Men. And for 3 or 4 years, it was absolutely fantastic. Persuading people to put Esso in their tank, to drink more port, to put Dulux on their walls. But early 1970, I thought there must be more to life than this. And I read in the Observer an ad for a job, Appeals and Publicity Director of NACRO, which is the National Association of Care and Resettlement of Offenders. And I'd started off with a law degree, and probably one of the most interesting bits of the law degree was criminology, and so I thought, I'll apply for that. I turned up at the interview, and one of the people on the panel was one of the directors of the agency I was working for. And I shuddered and I thought, well, I've got to do well in this, otherwise it's going to be challenging. Anyway, halfway through the interview, he did say, Jimmy, why on earth do you want to take a job which I know is, earn you less than you're currently doing, and blah, blah, blah. And I thought, well, might as well be honest. I said, slightly more politely, what I was just saying now about putting more products in the tank. And I joined NACRO, and the reason I'm referring to them, because in many ways, they on a national level were not dissimilar to a community foundation, because it was a National Association of Care and Resettlement Offenders. Part of my role was to raise profile of helping prisoners' families, delinquent kids, helping change people's attitudes and behaviour. But most important of all, I realised that the only way, because it's not the easiest subject matter in which to persuade people with money, to think is, what's the overall purpose of what we're doing in that group? And the overall purpose, apart from the doing good, was about crime prevention. It was actually encouraging people who are in real need, encouraging people to think about how they could change the way in their life, and what was in it for them and for us all was crime prevention. And it struck me when I was reflecting on this, that when we look at how we persuade people to support the different causes, it's what is the outcome we're trying to achieve with that. So that was the 1970s. Roll on to the 1990s, and I turn up in a committee room in the House of Commons. It's the annual meeting of a charity called ADAPT, which was dealing with people with drug addiction and alcohol problems. And a friend of mine had set up that charity. It was chaired by the estranged wife of a government minister. I don't think of a polite way of putting it. Estranged wife of a cabinet minister. And one of the trustees was a lady called Jane Wates. And some of you will recognise now. And Jane gave me this most incredible grilling. Mr. Gordon, what do you know about this? Why are you doing that? I couldn't understand. Here I am, an important, busy man, turning up at this meeting, volunteering to do something. Why am I being grilled like this? Anyway, somehow I survived the grilling and was invited to become a trustee. And a couple of weeks later, I was invited, because Jane asked me to come down to the old vicarage in Shiplake, where she lived, to talk about the charity and the accounts. And I said, why did you give me such a horrible time? And she said, well, the chairman, a lady called Vicky Norris, thought, as you were a friend of her husband Steve, and some of you, politicians go through scandals and so on, well, Steve Norris, back in the early 90s, was in the headlines for, I think he had a relationship with O'Brien. He was Matt Hancock in his time, in familiar terms. Actually, that's very unkind to Steve. And they were also concerned that if I was a friend of Brian Arbery, happened to be the chief exec, they were bringing their mate in. Anyway, so I discussed it all with Jane, what I thought could happen about the charity, and then she said, well, I think you're going to be able to help us. I'm now off to a soup kitchen in Reading. And I said, well, I'll come with you. And she said, come with me to a soup kitchen, you don't know such things. Well, when I'd been at university, I'd been involved in helping set up the soup kitchen in Edinburgh. And the reason I'm saying this is there's wonderful connections in life about how we do things. Anyway, Jane and I got to know each other. In fact, we got to know each other extremely well, and we had over 25 very happy years together. So that was great for me, and hopefully good for Jane, who sadly died 2 years ago. Jane was very much involved in the world of community foundations from the very early days. She was involved with Berkshire first, and ended up being chairman there. But then one day she said, "I've been invited to a meeting at Blenheim," and she returned from that meeting, and I said, "How did it go?" She said, "Well, it was fascinating. There was Bishop, Lord Lieutenant, many dons, and I was the only woman." And she said, and it's all about creating an Oxfordshire Community Foundation. And I said, and what do you think is going to happen? She said, well, I'm very keen on it. And I'm glad to say, thinking about that was early 70s. When I look around the room now, and I look at the Oxfordshire Community Foundation, the gender balance seems to be rather more healthy, doesn't it? Well, congratulate yourselves on that. And I think that is one of the other interesting ones, when you start looking at the threads and the patterns. So Jane was a member of the Wates family. Her father and two uncles set up something called the Wates Foundation. And in fact, the charity I was running, Peelsborough, were one of the beneficiaries of that. They supported work we were doing in London. And Jane, over time, I think, spent a great deal of her time working and supporting various voluntary organisations, but I think she was proudest of the work that she did in both Berkshire and Oxfordshire community foundations. Because what community foundations are doing are three, I think, very powerful things. They're communicating, encouraging collaboration, and campaigning. They're communicating between different organisations and with the broader community. They're encouraging collaboration between different organisations and entities, because a lot of us get passionate about the cause, but it's then looking at the broader picture. What can that cause? Who are the other people that we work closely with? Who are the other people that we can support? So how can we collaborate more effectively to support that particular cause? And campaigning, as Zoe has highlighted already, is going to be hugely important. We're coming out of very challenging times, and we're going to be entering even more challenging times. And the only way that we can make make Oxfordshire a better community to live in, a better community to be part of, is to help those in greatest need to help themselves. It goes back to full circle in saying that the work I was doing in NACRA was about crime prevention. Well, so similarly, I think the great benefit of community foundations is that they work through others to help people help themselves. And I'm proud of what Jane did over many years, and I hope I can help to continue to do the sort of things that she did for the benefit of Oxfordshire Community Foundation. Thank you.